A couple of months ago, I had a meeting for work through Zoom. Normally, we would conduct the meetings in person, but due to COVID-19, we were forced to work from our homes. We were also forced to have our meetings from home through Zoom, which allows you to video chat with multiple people at once. Our meetings generally did not have many people in them, just the ones in our area, which was around 4 to 5 people usually. That day, it was just Jen, Anne, Tony, and me. This was our third Zoom meeting that we were having. About 10 minutes into the meeting, our coworker Jen got up suddenly and said she would be right back. Because there were only 4 of us that day, we decided to wait for her to return before we continued the meeting. It got very quiet on the call. I was about to get up and go get some water when I heard Jen scream on the Zoom call. Then she said something. I couldn't make out what it was because it sounded like she was far away from her computer. A couple of us called out to her to see if she was okay. Then we heard a man's voice. All of us sat there in silence, wondering what was going on for about a minute. We heard Jen's voice again. It was faint and clearly coming from another room, but we could make out her saying please several times. Then we heard a man talking again, but couldn't make out what he was saying. About another minute passed before we saw a man come into the frame of Jen's Zoom screen. He was wearing a black jacket and a baseball cap pulled down. He also had a scruffy-looking beard. He looked around the room. When he saw us on the screen, he looked surprised and then walked over and ended Jen's Zoom call. We were all very confused as to what happened, but we decided to call the police because we were afraid the man was going to harm Jen. Thankfully, one of our coworkers on the call, Anne, knew Jen's address and reported the incident. We tried calling Jen multiple times, but couldn't get through. We ended the call and waited to find out any information of what happened. Finally, we found out that the man we saw on the call had knocked on Jen's apartment door, and as soon as she opened it, he forced himself inside with the intentions of robbing her. He took all of her cash as well as some of her valuable items and left, but was tracked down by police not long after. This story happened a couple of months ago. One of my best friend's name is Alex. Her and I grew up together and have remained close over the years. We both recently graduated from college, and she moved away across the country to begin her job. She was able to get a nice old little house in the city that her job was in. I was happy for her, and we planned to have a Zoom call after she had finished unpacking her things. At about 9 o'clock at night, she called me, and we chatted for a while. Then I asked her to give me a tour of her new house. She took her laptop and carried it around showing me the rooms. She showed me her kitchen, living room, and her bedroom, then showed me that she even had a little crawl space above the bedroom hallway. I asked to see it, and she said that she hadn't even looked at it yet. She said it was mostly for storage and nothing was really up there. Then she unlatched the handle and opened it. She told me she was too short to see up there and held her laptop up over her head so that only I could see what was up there, and did a little 360 spin so I could see around the crawl space. But when I looked around the crawl space, I thought I saw a person as she was turning the camera around. She asked me what it was like up there. I told her I thought I saw somebody. She started laughing and then began closing up the crawl space. I told her I was serious. She suddenly stopped laughing and asked me what I saw exactly. I told her I couldn't really see because it was dark, but it really looked like a person was up there. She got a chair and went back to the crawl space. She set down her laptop so I couldn't see anymore. About 30 seconds later, I heard her scream, and then she picked her laptop back up and told me there was definitely a man up there. She ran out to her car and called the police. She stayed in her car talking to me the entire time until they showed up. Then she ended our call. She called me back later that night to tell me that police went to her house to find the man still in her crawl space, and he was taken away. The man appeared to have been living there for several weeks and was very dirty. That was definitely the craziest Zoom call I ever had. This past spring, I was on a Zoom call with two of my friends. We were under a quarantine at the time, so we couldn't hang out in person the way we liked to. We started the call pretty late at night because one of my friends had just gotten off of work. We were all on the call for about 5 minutes before another person joined. This surprised us because we didn't tell anybody else about our call. It was supposed to just be the three of us. When the person's screen showed up, we saw it was somebody wearing a creepy clown mask. I was a little freaked out. We thought this had to be some kind of prank by one of our friends. We asked the person who they were, but they didn't say anything. They just sat there looking directly in the camera. Then they started moving back and forth slowly, and after a while, they pointed at the screen with their hand, which was covered in a glove. Whoever this was, we were all getting creeped out by this and decided to end the call and start a new one a few minutes later. When we did, only about a minute into the call this time, the same person joined. They kept pointing at the screen and staring. My friends and I had enough and ended the call for good this time. We texted each other in a group chat instead and talked about how creepy it was. One of us decided to contact Zoom and report the incident. We figured someone was hacking into our call somehow. I started watching Netflix in my apartment before bed. I was starting to get sleepy when I turned over and looked out my window. I just about had a heart attack at what I saw. Standing on the side of the road, facing my apartment, staring right at my window, was a man in the creepy clown mask we had seen on our Zoom call. My apartment was on the 3rd floor, and he was a good 150 feet away, but I still got incredibly scared. When he saw me, he started slowly waving. It was one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. Then he turned and slowly walked away, looking directly at me the entire time. I closed my blinds and turned off all my lights. Then I texted all of my friends what had happened. I kept looking out my window for several hours, but the man never came back. I didn't get much sleep that night at all. I haven't seen that clown guy since, and I hope I never do again. I still get creeped out every time I think about it. I used Zoom a lot this past spring with the whole quarantine situation and everything getting shut down. It took me a while to get used to it, but after a little bit, I really enjoyed it. I talked with a few of my friends, but mainly used it for school at the end of the year because my in-person classes got canceled. I remained at my college apartment because I enjoyed living alone and I needed to live there until my rent expired because my roommate went home. One night, I was in my room talking to 3 of my friends on Zoom who went to different universities. We were discussing school and how it was going for us, when one of my friends asked how my brother was doing. "He's good," I said. "Why is that?" My friend said, "Because he just walked behind you and video bombed you," and then my friend started laughing. I suddenly got the chills. "My brother isn't here," I said. "He's back home." My friends asked me who that was behind me then. I asked what the person looked like. They said they couldn't see the person's head, but they only saw they were wearing a black hoodie and jeans and walked in the back of my room. I quickly ran to my door, shut it, and locked it as well. I debated calling the police, but I decided to ask my friends a few more questions about the person because I thought there was a chance they could be pranking me. But just a few seconds later, I heard my doorknob start to turn. My heart started pounding, and I felt myself start to sweat. I decided to call the police. When I got on the line with them, they told me to wait there and they would have somebody over in a few minutes. Then I heard footsteps walking around the rest of my house. I tried my best to stay calm. Then I heard my front door shut, and I figured the person left. The police showed up a few minutes later, and sure enough, the person was long gone. They searched my apartment, but didn't find anyone. At that point, there wasn't much they could do because I didn't have a description of the person. After the officers left, I packed up all my stuff and drove home.